the Freeman Foundation. I'd also like to thank 100 Black Men. And one of the reasons why I'd like to thank 100 Black Men is because throughout the country, they've been a leading force in education reform. They've not waited for permission for the powers that be to say that it's all right for them to speak on the behalf of children. They're not waiting for the National Association for the Advancement of Black People to decide that they somehow wish to decide that it's all right for us to get up out of this bad situation we find ourselves in. 100 Black Men do more than just put their name on a flyer. They actually get out there and put their work in the community, and most specifically, even open schools. Even open schools. They challenge their pastors. They challenge their parishioners. They challenge the entire community to follow us. We, 100 Black Men, these gentlemen who do not in many cases work in education, but who see that it's their responsibility to do something. I thank them again for sponsoring yet another event in which we come to the community and have an honest conversation about what we need to do to improve ourselves. I'll look back and see some of the others. Kip, thank you so much for what you do. You stand as a hallmark of excellence throughout this country, showing that the lie that's been told about poor Black, Latino, and poor children is a lie. That if you live in a certain community, you simply do not have the same capacity as others. We've seen you do it all over this great nation of ours. And anybody who is involved in the education reform movement knows that KIPP is not just a brand, but a way of living. I have so much respect for what you've done all over this great country. Keep doing what you're doing. We're so proud. And quite frankly, I hope one day to be like you. I hope one day when I grow up, we run schools as powerful and as impactful as you are. See, game recognizes game. I don't have to hate on them to say that I want to be good. I don't have to say that they're bad because we want to be great. I say that they're great and recognize their greatness, and I want you to do the same. If you're fortunate enough to be one of those who are in their schools, congratulations to you. If you are on a waiting list, my heart breaks for you. And of course, our hosts, Yes Prep. I'd heard so much about Yes Prep for years. And again, for those of us who truly love educating children, for those of us who can't watch a story about an adult working with young people and bringing him forward without tearing up. I was in the hotel before I came here and I was watching ESPN. Only I can find a story to make me cry about working with young people on ESPN, but I did it. I did it. I watched Penny Hardaway, a NBA great, who decides to become a high school basketball coach back in Memphis because a brother who he had grown up with died of colon cancer, and they were friends, and he decided that he was going to carry his legacy, and these young men won a state championship. See, those of us who truly love helping people want to find as much inspiration as possible, and for you, Houston, you are very fortunate because you are in the Mecca of greatness. Yes, Prep is as good as it gets. It is as good as it gets. They are a national model and an international destination for those who want to learn how to take children from the bowels of poverty and raise them up to become something greater than their circumstances could have ever made possible. So to your principal, thank you so much, sir. It's a real honor to meet you. And to the parents who are here, I want to share with you a story as we go through this conversation. It will be a conversation because I speak to Black people on a pretty regular basis, and I recognize that even though I have the microphone, y'all are going to talk anyway, so we'll have a conversation. And for some of us, we'll conversate. But in any case, as I was watching the young people perform up here, I couldn't help but think back to a time when my mother was a single mother who had given birth to a child on her 16th birthday. And how as we lived in public housing, we came to another one of those rallies where we were fighting for our rights yet again, where some kind outside organization paid to make sure that it happened, whether they bought the pizza, or they rented the hall, turned on the microphones, brought the DJ in. And made it possible for us to assemble. And so there was a certain sense of nostalgia as I watched it, but there's also a significant sense of frustration. I am really sick and tired of going to rallies. I really am. I'm tired of getting the t-shirts made up, getting the buses ordered, going to the state capitol, and trying to help people who are supposed to be representing the needs of the community to understand that the community needs them. From the time I can remember, I've been involved in rallies, trying to understand how in a country as great as this one, poor people have to beg for an education. Not for housing or resources that would look like. We just want an education. It took me back to when I was in middle school and then in high school, where we were going to rallies. Because the Upward Bound program, which was the precursor to many of the school choice conversations that we're having here, the only viable way out was a summer program. Was being challenged. And so we got the t-shirts made up and we got the buses ordered. And we went there. And as young people, we told our stories, and many of us broke down and cried in front of legislators if we could arrest them from their offices to get them to come out and just talk to us, just consider our perspective. Even as we brought 100, 200, mostly poor minority children to the state capitol or to Congress. And we stand outside in the horrible weather and chant, begging for what should have been ours since birth. And they would nicely shake our hands and take a couple pictures, and we'd be back next year. A different colored t-shirt. Same old buses. And another picture. And then we decide that we're going to start a school in a poor community, thinking this time we won't have to fight. This time we won't have to fight. They have an 81% dropout rate in this community. God knows they have to want us to help. And so we bring what we think is a simple idea. All we want to do is start a school that's going to educate the public. We want to use public money to educate the public. And it was there that we learned that the same thing that I've seen us fight for from the time that I can remember, we're still fighting for today. Now, when I was younger, it seemed like it was white people. It seemed like it was rich people. It seemed like it was people who were different than us, who were somehow trying to stop us from getting out of poverty. It seemed like there was always some other group upon whom we could blame the circumstances. But then I grew up. And then I recognized that it wasn't a race of people, it was a type of person. It wasn't an economic bracket that this person fell in, it was an emotional bracket that this person fell in. It wasn't the language that they spoke, it was how they interpreted our circumstances. It wasn't that they were so different that I could distinguish them by their aesthetic. I could only get to know them by their actions, and their actions were such that they wanted to make sure that the system stayed exactly as they had set it up. Even those who looked exactly like me, who spoke languages that I spoke, who ate what I ate, who came from my neighborhoods, those people who I was under the impression had my back, were then and are now still trying to hold us back. There's a tragedy and triumph to the notion of school choice. The tragedy is that the overwhelming majority of American children will never have an opportunity to choose the school to which they attend, which I find very interesting. I find it interesting in a community and in a country and a state in which we can choose virtually anything. You'll hear our good friends, the liberals, saying how important it is for a woman to have the right to choose what she does with her body. We want her to choose what she does with her body, which means that they want her to be able to have an abortion or not. But if she decides to have that child and live in this neighborhood, they do not want her to choose where she gets to send her child to school. It is they, the good friends in the Democratic Party, they, the NAACP, they, those people who we've so often depended upon, who are standing squarely in the way, making sure that they do all that they can to limit our access to quality education, as they, as parents, do all they can to get it for themselves. What a mighty hypocrite. What a foul person who would run for office in a poor community, who would head up a not-for-profit organization in a poor community, would benefit from that poor community, would use those benefits to create options for them to send their child to any school they wish, and then remove those same options from the same community. What a mighty hypocrite. What a foul person. See, I don't have kind words for people who hurt kids. I don't like them. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what community they come from. I don't care what team they like. We ain't cool. A couple years back, a woman, her name is Randi Weingarten. She's a union president. She and I were waiting to go on CNN. And she said to me, "You know, Steve, I think that you and I could really get along and work together." I said, "I don't think so." She said, no, really. This is a true story. She'd tell you it's not true, but she's a liar anyway, so that doesn't make that. She said, "I really think that we could, that we probably have a lot in common." I said, "I promise you we don't. You work to keep adults in jobs as they hurt people. I work to take them out. I work for kids. You work for grown people. We don't work for the same team." She said, and I'm telling you this is a true story because she's so, astute. She said, "Al Sharpton and I are friends." Because God knows that's what I needed to change my opinion. She said, "Al Sharpton and I are friends. Here, take my phone. Call him. I talked to him yesterday. I said, I don't give a damn if you talk to him. Al Sharpton is not the king of me." I do not have kind words for individuals who make it possible for us to even need to be here today. It's a beautiful day here in Houston. There's a lot of things y'all could be doing today. Matter of fact, some of you husbands, I know that y'all here because you don't want to be doing the stuff that you're supposed to be doing back home right now. We shouldn't have to be here to have a conversation about whether or not your child gets to go to a good school. What an absurd notion in this United States of America that you have to have a conversation about whether or not you get in. The same people running their mouths about income inequality want to make sure the income inequality stays institutionalized because they don't want to give children access to a good school. There is no better poverty program than to make sure that a child goes to a good school. You see, the problem is that we have gotten ourselves caught up in certain camps. When I was a child, that was what I did. When I was a child, I figured that people who looked like me or who lived where I lived or who believed what I believed or so I believed or were in the same political party that I wished to be in, those people, I believed that those people were my people. I've grown up now. My people, the people who care about kids. I don't care what people you come from. I don't care what language you speak. I don't care how much money you make or don't make. I don't care what your political stripe is or isn't. I don't care who you're down with or who you're not. I don't care what kind of music you listen to or not. That is not of my concern. If you care about kids enough to make sure that you raise your voice to make sure that more opportunities are available for more children, we're on the same team. You don't have to be pro-charter. You just have to be pro-choice as far as I'm concerned. Long as you care about kids going to good schools regardless of the type of school, because there's some charter schools that shut down this afternoon. There's some charter schools that we should go to this afternoon and shut it down. But on the way there, let's shut down all those raggedy traditional public schools as well. And if you pass by a Catholic school that's not working, shut that, kick the door on that one too down. It matters not the kind of school, it matters the quality of the school. We just started a school in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which means nothing to most people, except for the fact it's in one of the wealthiest counties in America. Yet this community is one of the poorest communities in America. Shocker. That it's mostly black and Latino. So we started the school with grades 6 to 12. We took children from all grades. In our 6th grade, only 14% of the children can do math on grade level. I want to understand how it's possible for a person to call himself or herself a teacher or a principal or a custodian or a social worker or any way collect a paycheck from a school in which you know children are not learning. I want to know how you comfortably sleep at night. I want to know what sort of mental gymnastics you have to go through in order to make it okay for you to collect that check, cash that check, and live the lifestyle that you are being allotted, knowing that you work somewhere that is lying to a community and destroying children. I want to know what you tell yourself about those children and those parents. I want to know how you explain that to your friends and family. How is it that you somehow conjure up the stories to make people feel bad for you as you get paid to fail people? I want to know how you get a weekend. I want to know how you get evenings off. I want to know how you get a summer. When you're sending children to us who are in the 6th grade, who are reading at a kindergarten level, you knew that when you had that child in your class. You had it for 187 days. Explain to me how it is possible for you to look a parent in the eye as she comes in for a parent-teacher night and say, oh, your child is such a nice child. He makes friends with everyone. He has a lot of promise. How do you sit comfortably in that space knowing that that child is not learning? How is it possible for you to check out and think for a second, man, I'm going to go home tonight because I've done all my work today? How is it possible? See, the tragedy and triumph of choice is that some parents have to make a horrible choice. They have to make the choice of keeping one child in a school in which they know that she is not learning. They know it. They sit her down. They try to read with her, and she can't read. They try to work on the math facts with her, and she just doesn't seem to have them. And she spent 6.5 hours at school today. And she's not 6.5 hours smarter. In fact, when you ask her what she learned today, what does she say? And she's not lying. The data is really clear. She actually didn't learn anything. If you think it's possible for a living being, the highest of living beings, being a human being, to spend an entire day in an environment called a school where people are supposed to be teaching all day, and they come home and they say they learned nothing, they're not lying. The tragedy and triumph of choice is knowing that you have 2 children or 3 children or 4 children, and one of them gets into Yes Prep. One of them gets into KIPP, and the other 2 do not. The other 2 do not. And you go through it in your head. What do I do? The excitement that 2 got in and 2 didn't. Or 1 got in and 1 didn't. The tragedy and triumph as you go to buy the uniform for one child's school, go down that school supply list, which is much longer at a good school, which is much more involved at a good school. You have those parent meetings before the school year starts that are much more comprehensive, that are much more compelling. The people there seem like they're on some sort of religious high. They come in and they greet you, and people are smiling and laughing, and they come and hug you and tell you they love your child, and they didn't even meet the child. You're thinking, I don't love them right now. The tragedy and triumph of choice is this, that you have 2 children. One who you know, if they just go to this school, if they just get into this school, if they just do what the school says, if they just get decent grades at the school, they're going to college. I mean, literally going to a 4-year college. I mean, it's a fait accompli. It's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. If they go to this school, and they graduate from this school, if all they did was go to this school and graduate from the school, they will be accepted to a 4-year college, period. You know that. And in some cases, because the school's reputation is so good, colleges will be circling around with scholarships. Have high school graduating classes of 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 with $40 million worth of scholarships. Just as a course of just happens, just because the school is that good. Or you have your other child in a school where you know nobody's going to college. If they go, they're going to a community college. If they go, they're going to a community college without the basic skills that are necessary to be successful. They're going to go to community college. They're going to stay in remedial classes for about 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the event that they have that level of persistence. And then they're just going to tap out. And how do you as a mom, a single mom, or a parent, or a grandparent, or parents, how do you justify, how do you reconcile, how do you in your mind sit there and say, I'm going to do it for this child, but not for this one? How many times do you sit with your 2 children, your 2 sons, your 2 daughters, your daughter and your son, and try to explain to them, Dad loves you too. He does, and he really does love you. And I hate that you're number 600 on this waiting list. Again. And I know your brother comes home happy from school with hours of homework. And you come home with not even a worksheet. And mom is going to go up to the school and she's going to fight for you and she's going to argue and she's going to do all she can, but she can't make 7 teachers give your child homework. I'm tired of rallies. Tired of these conversations. This year alone, I will speak in 71 cities. I will speak to 71 cities. Black people, white people, poor people, rich people. Now I'll leave every single community just a little bit more heartbroken as I meet more and more children. See, the faces are real to me. I'm not one of these people who just gets to just live in the ethos of the conversation, this esoteric place. I get to meet people whose children are going to good schools and children who are not going to good schools. See, our school in Harlem that we just opened, we have 160 seats. We had 1,065 applicants for 2 grades. The school that we had in Hartford, 2,700 applications for 50 seats. I stopped doing bus duty because I got tired of standing outside and having parents pull up and say, man, why didn't my kid get in? I just couldn't explain it anymore. I couldn't say, hey, man, it's not my fault. I want your child in. Matter of fact, I'm trying to get more schools in this community, but the community is fighting us. The same people who you put in office are fighting to make sure that I can't get you in. You mad at me because I'm the principal. Bruh, I'm mad like you're mad. We're in the same place. I'm tired of having this conversation. I just want to put the kids on the bus. I don't want any more people pulling up. I'm tired of watching grown men come up to me and cry, man, I've been on your waiting list for 4 years. My child's in his junior year. I know he's not getting what he's supposed to. And I can't help him because I don't know. I went to the same school he goes to. See, the tragedy and triumph of choice is not just a choice that we have to make between children, but the fact is that we know that children all over this great city are not going to get into these schools. They're not. And those of us who work in these schools, we don't revel in this. This is not something we're proud of. Some schools will do a really public lottery because, I'll explain to you why in a second. I'm really going to explain to you why they have to do a public lottery. But we'll do a public lottery, and we decided there's no way I am not doing a public, there's no way I'm going to stand up here and pull children's names out while other children just break down and cry. I'm not doing that. I don't care what you say. And I know why they do it. The reason why they do it is because the racism is so deeply embedded in our psyche as a country that when we see a school like Yes, or we see a school like KIPP, and we see them taking children from this community and sending them to colleges at rates of 90 and 100%, we say that they did something nefarious. We say they cheated. We say that those are not the same kids. Say they creamed. What a racist thing to say, creamed. Really? You say that they creamed, so they took the white part out? Wow. That is awfully liberal of you. And people say these things like they're facts. You know, they kick all the bad kids out. So the kids that didn't get in are bad. The kids your kids that are on the waiting list are just bad people. Wow. That's awesome. Thanks. So my kid that got in is good and the one that didn't get in is bad? See, in order for people to keep this system in place, they need us to remain silent. They need us to sit there and apologize for working at a charter school, or apologize for having our children in a charter school, apologize for being at a board on charter school. Just, I know, and feel bad for it. I don't want you to feel bad for it. See, the tragedy is that we feel bad for the triumph. I hate the fact that only one of your kids got in, but thank God that one did. We are in this situation because people make a living off the traditional public school system. And you'll never hear a budget crisis when it comes to building a prison. But you will hear a budget crisis when it comes to adding more school options. And I don't even understand from the perspective of those people who keep the system open how they benefit. Teachers who work in schools in which they're afraid to stay at work. Teachers who go to work and they're scared because the place is chaotic, because the place feels dangerous. As soon as you walk in there, and you know what schools I'm talking about, every city has them. You walk in and you think, man, I got to get up out of here. Just imagine being 6 and in that school. Think of the personality that you have to develop in order to be effective or stay in that school and not feel afraid. See, school choice is not just something that we need, those of us who come from historically disadvantaged populations. It's something that even our colleagues in education need. You know, I have 2 sons, and my 2 sons go to one of our schools because I wouldn't open a school that I wouldn't send my children to. But it's not easy for me to celebrate them being at one of our schools, because I'm constantly reminded of how many other children are not. School that we opened in Bridgeport, in the first year, without a building, we didn't even have a building. No one had ever seen the inside of the building. We rented a mental health facility and converted it. Not one parent who applied to the school even knew the address of the school. And in 45 days, 900 parents applied. School choice is not some sort of controversial topic anymore. The water's out of the cup. It's over. The conversation about stopping school choice is done. These rallies that we keep going to, these gatherings that we keep having, need to shift. We need to be much more deliberate in our requests. We need to make it clear that we are not playing with the people who we've elected. If they're going to send their children to the best school for them, then we expect the same for every one of us. And if they cannot do that, we will make sure that their lives are very uncomfortable until such time as they do. And uncomfortable means uncomfortable. We will put their name out there publicly to say where they sent their child to school. You want to play with people's lives? Let's play with people's lives. You got kids? Let's talk about kids. You don't think that my kids are as valuable as yours? Why? Because you send your children to a private school? Isn't it interesting that many of the very people who we elect always seem to get really lucky and in there with their children in magnet schools or charter schools? Isn't that amazing? Just an awesome, like they get elected and they get their child into a school that has a 3,000 person waiting list. That is really freaking cool. But when you ask them to stand up at the rally, yeah, you know, I can't because. Stop letting them off the hook. We keep playing with these folks and our children keep dying. 75% of the children who are incarcerated are functionally illiterate. Now, functionally illiterate is a very kind way of saying they can't read. But it's true, they really cannot. Go to many of your youth prisons, you will find that many of the children, even if they're 15, 16, 17 years old, are in fact virtually illiterate. Not dumb. They're 2 different things. Not unintelligent. They've just never been taught to read. I am saying that the only way to make it so that we can get our Saturdays back, so we don't have to print up any more stupid t-shirts, so we don't have to go on any more buses and go to any more rallies, is for us to start playing for real. See, when I was younger, we used to have this thing called slap boxing. I would say to my friends, I don't slap box. If you hit me, we are fighting. I don't care if your hand is open or closed. You hit me, we're fighting. And if we're fighting, we're going to fight. Like, we're not going to fight until you get tired. We're going to fight till I feel like it's over. We've been slapboxing in the reform community for quite some time. We keep thinking if we just explain it to them, if we just show them the data, then they'll come around. If we just show them how a school like this can be in a community that doesn't seem to have a lot of wealth and can still perform at the same level as some of the highest income earning school districts, then they'll see, yeah, we should open more of those. But in fact, because the racism and classism is so real, they say that this is some sort of thing that's made up, that you've gassed the numbers. If we open up another KIPP and then they are successful in yet another community, yeah, but you don't understand. They kick out all the bad kids. And you say, well, can you show me one of those bad kids they kicked out? No, I don't know of any, but I heard about it. No, but could you just show me a kid that they kicked out? In fact, if you show me one, I'll show you one that you kicked out of your schools, and we'll just keep going until we find out who ends up with the most amount of kids kicked out. Because it's a strange position to be in, to be a leader of a traditional public school with a 40% graduation rate, and you're telling somebody else that they're kicking kids out. It's a strange position to be somebody who's supporting traditional public schools that are 50% empty, talking about people getting kicked out. Schools that so many people have left that the city has to shut them down because they can't afford to run them anymore. That the community has voted with their feet, but not spoken with their mouths. So parents and activists who are here this afternoon, if you're tired of rallies like I am, then we got to shift the strategy. This is where you start to print the names of the legislators who are fighting against you and say that their children do not go to the same schools that they are in their district. This is when you start to call people out. When you say to your local chapter of the NAACP, if they are not willing to support you, you are not willing to support them. You are not going to the Freedom Fund dinner. You're not giving them a dime for what they say they want. You're not doing it. If they are unwilling to come to the table to be a part of the conversation and to represent some CPs as opposed to AFTs and NEAs and the other unions that they seem to be jumping behind, if these folks are not going to be on our team, then we recognize that they are not on our team. We're not going to make it possible for them to be comfortable anymore. There is nothing that hurts more for me to go from community to community and think, man, I could start a school there. I meet all these really cool kids, and I think, wow, how lucky they are to get to have these kids in their schools. And you sit down and you talk to them, and the kids are just so interesting, and they have such wonderful stories, and they just want to do, and they just bounce all over the place, and some of them will even sit, like the most amazing. You see, we got kids sitting through a lecture on a Saturday. Sitting through a lecture on a Saturday. Sitting through a lecture on a Saturday. Same kids that if they go to a school that's a failed school, people are going to say their parents don't care and the children don't want to learn. They're sitting through a lecture on a Saturday. Going to blame them for living in the poor community. Going to blame them for having one parent. Going to blame them for everything, but not exalt them and give them the opportunity. Listen, man, if you can't educate them, give them to me. But I want the money that comes with them. I don't want you keeping their tuition in your failed school anymore. Well, you just want to privatize education. You call it what you want, homie. I just want my kids. I'm not prepared to have this gentle conversation anymore. I really do. I wish I could take you all with me and you come around the country and we take a look and you see what I see. It's heartbreaking, man. The Black and Latino communities it's looking bad. It's looking real bad. If you don't think so, you're playing yourself. Just because a couple people made it, just because a couple of us got nice cars and nice neighborhoods and our kids go to certain schools, we as a community are not chilling. When each one of us, especially those of us who are among the only ones in our family going to college, can still name and are among the first in our family. We're talking about 2016. How on earth would you have people from Arkansas still the first in their family? We're not talking about people just got here. We're talking about just even us. Still talking about we're the first in our family to get a degree. First to graduate from high school? Really? This generation, Generation X, you still among the first? Malcolm said it was going to happen, and chickens have come home to roost. You can't continue to undereducate, as Carter Woodson said. You cannot continue to undereducate an entire population of people and expect anything other than pathologies to develop. And some of the strange pathologies that start to develop is now, here's the really strange thing. Now, this very lifeboat that we've built, these charter schools, these schools of choice, these opportunities that we put forward, now they've somehow become the enemy. How the hell? The only route out has in fact become the enemy because of why? Because there's so few people that can get into these schools that the people who we're serving think that we're no longer serving them. They think that we are somehow keeping them out. They think that we are excluding them. They see us as the enemies. They don't recognize that it's their legislators and the civil rights organizations that are unwilling to stand with those like the Urban League who are doing what they need to do, or 100 Black Men. They won't stand with them. Think of the pathology that develops when a person or a group of people are so hurt and so beaten that they actually begin to think that the people who are trying to save them are working against them. How many times have I been in a conversation where I've sat down and talked to someone who's mad at me because they didn't get into our school? After I just spent all week up at the state capitol trying to get them to give us more seats. So I come back to my district, and I'm standing outside my school, and this parent literally is enraged at me as a person, because she doesn't know who's doing it. And it's because we as ed reformers, we don't tell them who's doing it. We don't put their names on billboards. We don't put their faces on billboards. We don't run ads about who it is. We never tell the truth. We never do. And so strange as it is, because we come into this thing slap boxing and they're really fighting, the other side is really fighting, they stand back and watch us fight the exact people we're trying to help. And the most tragic part about this is because there's such limited school choice, children and families who are just running from failed schools will pick any school without even taking into consideration that the school is year-round. If it's a year-round school, an extended day, they may have a uniform, they may not. It may be arts, it may be a science. They don't even care. But the problem is the school was designed for children to do something in particular. So if those families don't want that, then again, we are at loggerheads with the very people we're trying to help because there are so few options. Folks, if you, like I am, tired of rallies, tired of meetings, tired of conversations, then we got to end this fight for real. We got to make the other side tap out. We got to make the other side say, you know what? They are not playing anymore. They are really fighting. They are firing away at us. They are not being nice. They are not trying to be gentlemen or ladies. They are really trying to whoop our behinds. And we need to quit. They are calling us out in all the things that the other side has done to us. When we were opening our school in Bridgeport, the teachers union said that I stood to make $15 million off of the opening of the school. Now, let me do a little math for you. The school's entire budget is $2.5 million. In order for that to occur, I would have had to have run the school for 6 years and not paid anyone a single dime, and still I wouldn't have come up with that number. Yet and still, when I sat there before the State Department of Education, these appointed people, the first question that they asked me was, how much do you stand to make off of this school? No one asked me, hey, Doc, for the past 3 years when you guys were planning this, were you paying people out of your pocket? I was. Did you receive any revenue at all? No, not a dime. So for 3 years you volunteered to start this? I did. No one asked about that. They ask us how much we make. They do everything they can to derail the conversation as opposed to just saying, hey, wait a minute. Yes, Prep is one of the best schools in the United States of America. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. It is. The KIPP schools have been studied and poked and prodded umpteen million times by enemies and friends alike. Opponents and proponents have all come in and said what they're going to say, but in the end, they're better than the schools in their neighborhoods. Everywhere in the country. So if you care about kids, you just will open more. If anything, you go to them and say, hey, man, how many more can you open? And how fast? We, those of us in the ed reform community, have become too comfortable with this rally meeting thing. Doesn't have to be this way. The NRA doesn't exist like this. AARP doesn't exist like this. And teacher unions don't exist like this. Only us. Only those of us who are trying to help the poor. And so I say to you this. I hope you get tired of going to rallies too. I hope at some point you get so tired that you're willing to start a real fight. A real fight. To set it off for real. Start running big ads with people's pictures in them. Get on urban radio and start talking about it. Get on talk radio. Get on conservative radio. Get on the internet and point out all of them. This is their address and this is their kid's school. They do not exist in the same school system. Point out how they don't use the same measly resources that they're trying to force down our throats. I'll close here. The tragedy and triumph of choice is this. The greatest is that as it gives us hope, it makes some families feel hopeless. As one child gets in, another child doesn't. As one family's kids get in, their neighbors do not. This is American education, man. It's not supposed to be this hard to get in it. If you consider the following as you think and as we talk. For the first time in American history, poor families are asking this question that only middle and upper middle class families used to ask. Where are you sending your kids to school? That, my friends, is revolutionary. That is revolutionary. This country was designed such that you could only make that decision if you were willing to lie and cheat if you were poor. Say that you live somewhere that you don't. Or when race is a deciding factor in a magnet or other lottery, change your child's race. We need more choice, not less. We need more opportunities, not less. And we need more triumph, not less. Thank you for your time and attention.